Hello everyone and welcome to Life Begins at 20. My name is Mark and today we have the second instalment of my massive cube update. For those that haven't seen the initial video, which was the white cards, there'll be a link in the description below, and by the end of this 2-week period there'll be links in the description below for all of them and a playlist together, so if you've missed any of them there will be ways to see all of the other colours as well. In this video we're going to be going over the mass changes that I've made within the blue section of my cube, and overall, there's been 300 plus changes to the entirety of my cube, and I would just like to thank every single person that's made suggestions to me in the previous videos. The cube is playing so much better now. So, without any further ado, let's get stuck in. So starting up with the blue Planeswalkers, we've reduced the number by 1 purely down to the fact that Jace Memory Adept was a little bit broken within cube just because of the milling effect, and I really didn't like that. So I will be replacing it at some point either with Tezzeret or Tamiyo, whichever I can get my hands on the first. But here we go, starting up with Jace Architect of Thought, which again is the same as before. So for 2 and 2 blue, 4 Loyalty Planeswalker. Until your next turn, whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks, it gets -1/-0 to the end of turn. So little tiny bit of protection going on there. Revealing the top 3 cards of your library, separates those piles, so it's a nice bit of card draw potentially to get you something that you'd want. And -8, which you're probably never ever going to get to. For each player, search that player's library for a non-land card, exile it, and you get to cast it without paying its mana cost. So again, not the strongest of blue Planeswalkers going on here, but I do need to replace Jace Memory Adept for sure with either Tamiyo or Tezzeret. And then the other one we've got here is Teferi, Temporal Archmage, 6 cost, 5 Loyalty Planeswalker. You get to look at the top 2 cards, put 1 into your hand, so a nice bit of card draw there. -1, untapping up to 4 target permanents. So that can be very, very useful in a Spells Matter style deck, or even, any other kind of decks you've swung in with the load of stuff. Get to untap everything ready for a defensive stage, or if you've gone tapped a load of mana off your mana rocks, for example, you can then untap all of those and you can get some serious work out of them. And then the -10 there is getting an emblem. You can activate the loyalty point from Planeswalkers at any point in time, which is really, really good. So, that's really, really handy. But to be perfectly honest, its -1 is very, very strong. So moving into the 1-drops, Delver of Secrets is here, mainly down to the Spells Matter archetype. Again, very, very useful. Better, obviously, than Constructed, but no. So if you've got 1/1 for 1, beginning of your upkeep, you get to reveal the top card of your library. If it's instant or sorcery, you get to transform into a 3/2 flyer, so that's always useful to have. Plus, then we've got Mausoleum Wanderer here, so it's a flying 1/1 for 1 that, it can get bigger if you've got spirits entering the battlefield. Very, very unlikely because I don't have that many of them, but to be perfectly honest, it's the best bits at the bottom there, so you get to sacrifice it, and you can't target spell unless your opponent plays X, where X is its power, so again, can be very, very useful to have. So moving into the 2-drops, we're going to start off with Jace Vryn's Prodigy. Again, a really, really solid card. Looter style effect there as well, and it's not too difficult to flip him over and protect him, where his +1 up to 1 target creature gets -2/-0 to the end of the turn. Can be quite useful as a little bit of protection there. -3, you may cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard this turn. If that card would be put into your graveyard, instead exile it. So again, that's quite useful, giving all of the cards in your graveyard flashback. Again, very, very useful, especially in a spell style deck there. Or the -9 is you get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell, target opponent puts the top 5 cards of a library into a graveyard. Again, the ultimate's not necessarily going to be too achievable there, but to be perfectly honest, you may be able to get this -3 off a couple of times, and that could really finish off an opponent, which is always good. Then we've got our Looter style effect cards here. So Merfolk Looter again, very, very good card. Wolf Infiltrator with Skulk, which is always useful. And then you've got the looting ability whenever you deal combat damage to a player. And then whenever you discard a creature card, you can pay 2 to put a 3/2 Eldrazi onto the battlefield as well. So that can always be very useful. And then Looter Core with Shadow. And plus it means whenever it deals combat damage, you get the Looter effect as well, which is always useful to have. Just getting stuff into the graveyard as well is always good. Snapcaster Mage from Modern Masters 2017, absolutely over the moon that we opened this up. So for 2, it's a 2/1 with Flash, enter battlefield, target instant sorcery in your graveyard gains flashback, which is always useful, especially in a spell style deck as well. Plus it means you get yourself a little blocker on top. Thing in the Ice is still here. Again, for spells matter deck, it's always going to be useful to have. So for 2, it's a 0/4 defender, which again is going to be quite useful earlier on in the game, especially against aggro. Gets 4 ice counters on it. Whenever you cast a spell, you get to remove one of those counters. Again, it's instant or sorcery spells, that is, and you get to flip it over to a 7/8, which has a nice one-sided upheaval effect, and you only get to keep anything that's a non-horror, any horror creatures. So, you know, that's fantastic and can really swing the game in your direction. Then we've got Baral, Chief of Compliance, which is a really nice defensive card, and I've really been enjoying it, especially against aggro. Instant sorcery spells cost 1 less to cast, so again, really fits into the spells matter archetype as well. And whenever you counter a spell, you get to draw a card and discard a card well, so that's again a nice little looter effect on top. Frostwalker is here for a nice little aggressive, you know, blue card, which is very rare, to be perfectly honest. Plus, you know, it's in foil. Again, I'm trying my best to show that, but it's proving quite difficult. Again, quite useful. Plus, it means whenever it comes to target a spell or ability, you get to sacrifice it. Stratus Dancer is another one of those morph creatures that I'll have within my cube. Again, I don't have too many of them. Worst case scenario, it's a flying 2/1 for 2, which isn't fantastic, but it's not too bad in blue. But if you megamorph it, you get to counter target instant or sorcery spell, which can be quite useful. And then last of all, we've got Phantasmal Image. So again, this gets a nice copy creature effect of anything on the battlefield. But whenever it comes as target of a spell or ability, you have to sacrifice it. But this could become very useful depending on what cards you have and what your opponent has there. So moving on into the 3-drops, we've got a couple of bounce creatures there, Mana War and Aether Adept. So again, both be very useful to have, just to bounce some big threat your opponent's got back to their hand, and then you get yourself a little 2/2 blocker on top. So again, quite useful to have there. Next we've got Surrender Befreet. So again, it's aggressive blue card here. So for 3 cost, it's a flying 3/4, and beginning of your upkeep, it deals 1 damage to you as well. So that's the downside for it. But again, it could be quite useful to have a 3/4 flyer when you've got 3 mana up. Trinket Mage is here for, again, very useful to get hold of X cost artifacts or just 1 cost artifacts as well. So for 3, it's a 2/2, and you get to go and find it, which is again very useful to have. Seagate Oracle, again, is another quite useful card to have at this mana cost. So for 3, it's a 1/3, enters the battlefield. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, 1 into your hand and the other to the bottom. So nice little card draw effect there. Next, Wall of Frost. Again, from Modern Masters 2017 has been quite nice. So for 1/2 blue, it's a 0/7 defender, which to be honest is going to block a hell of a lot of things there. And whenever it blocks a creature, that creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step, which is really nice. You can just, you know, hold back what your opponents have got. And then the last 2 cards we've got here are Deceiver Exarch and Pestamite. To be perfectly honest, I'm in the process of picking up Kiki Jiki and Splinter Twin. Whether I can trade for them at some point in time or pick them up is still, you know, I really need to get hold of them because I really want to have that little bit of a combo going on in here. But they're still quite useful by themselves as well. Flash blocker going in there, untapping or tapping a permanent your opponent controls can be quite useful. And then a flash flyer on the other side as well. So again, useful cards by themselves, but I am definitely going to be putting Kiki Jiki and Splinter Twin in at some point soon. So moving on to the 4-drops, and again another card from Modern Master 2017, and you're going to see a lot of that within my cube. That made a huge difference to it, and this card is fantastic. So Venser Shaper Savant. So for 2 and 2 blue, it's a flash 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, return target spell or opponent to its owner's hand. So if they're going to put down a massive bomb or something along those lines, you get to just go, no, it's not happening. Get rid of a counter spell, for example. Get rid of a big creature. That's always useful. Really been happy with getting that card. Next up, Dungeon Geist hasn't changed. So for 2 and 2 blue, flying 3/3, enters the battlefield, tap target creature, and it doesn't untap as long as you control that. So again, a nice card there. Next up, we've got a couple of impersonator style cards here. So Clever Impersonator is always good because it can be any permanent on the opponent's got. Or even you've got as well, to be perfectly honest. So again, it can be very useful. So for example, you know, in a powered cube, you could copy this to be another Soul Ring, for example, or a Batterskull, or anything along those lines. It can be really useful. Whereas on the other side here, we've got Vizier of Many Faces from Amonkhet, and it becomes a copy of a target creature. You know. But the best part about this with the Vizier is you've got Embalm as well, so you can do this another time later on in the game, especially when you've got a fair bit of mana. So do enjoy that card. I love having those effects, and the Vizier's been doing quite well. Next up, we've got Curator of Mysteries. So it's a flying 4/4 for 4, and whenever you cycle or discard another card, you get to scry 1. You can cycle it as well for 1 blue. And to be perfectly honest, within blue, the amount of discarding you can be able to do, or looting effects you can be able to do, it's going to be very, very useful to have that. So it's doing pretty decent work at the moment. Next up, we've got 2 more cards here. Tauran's new from the dual deck, and these are mainly for, well, Tauran can be working in a token strategy as well, but it's mainly for the Spells Matter archetype again, just because I really wanted to be able to have that work properly. So Tauran, getting yourself a 2/2 Drake with flying whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell is quite useful, along with Niblis of Frost there, which has got prowess and flying and a 3/3 body, so again, can do some work in terms of aggressive damage as well, but it means you can tap an opponent's creature down, it doesn't untap in their next untap step as well, so again, that's very, very nice. Padim, I've still got in here artifacts control of hexproof, which can be quite useful in certain circumstances, but I need to really push the artifact support within my cube if I really wanted to use him to his full potential, but there are still plenty of things within the cube that are going to be supporting artifacts. And I mean, you got Tinker and other stuff like that, bringing in some big ones, so having them having X-proof or any of the signets is always going to be quite useful. And then last of all, we've got a nice little utility card here. So for 2 and 2 blue, it's a 2/2. When enter battlefield, you get 2 1/1 Thopter artifact creature tokens, which again is quite useful because you get to tap 2 untapped artifacts you control, and a target creature can't be blocked. So that again is going to be quite useful, especially if you've got some massive great creature you just want to swing in for the win with. So Whirler Rogue has been very, very good and is still in the cube. On to the 5 drops, and we've got Mole Drifter. Again, this is just a really nice card. 5 cost is flying 2/2, enter the battlefield, draw 2 cards, or you can pay its a vote cost to just draw 2 cards for 3, so love the versatility on that. We've got Riftwing Cloudskate still, and this is just really nice. So for 5, it's 2/2, and it gets to bounce an opponent back, or you can use the suspend 3 for a 1 and a blue and bounce something back later on. So again, really do like that. Icefall Region is a nice little card to have in here. So for 3 and 2 blue, it's a flying 4/3. Enters the battlefield, you get to tap a target creature your opponent controls. Again, really useful, and it doesn't untap for as long as you've got him. Plus, it's got a little bit of protection on itself there. With spells your opponents cast, the target they have to pay 2 more, which is useful, and that works in a similar way to what Glyphkeeper has, in the sense that for 5 cost, they get a flying 5/3. But whenever he comes a spell of a target or ability, you get to counter that. So that's always useful to have a little bit of protection on there. Plus with the Glyphkeeper, it's always nice to have Embalm on there, so later on in the game if it does get removed you can always bring it back, and having a flying body you can bring back, again, is always useful to have at any stage. Then we've got Maloku the Clouded Mirror, so 4 and a blue. It works well nicely with a token style strategy going on here, plus it just means later on in the game as well you've got some extra bits and pieces to do. So flying 2/4, so having the evasion is quite nice, and it's out of bolt range. Pay 1 mana, return a land, and then put a 1/1 flying illusion into play, which is always nice. Another one of the cards for the Spells Matter archetype. It also slightly works if you're going to go kind of hybrid that with tokens, is Docent of Perfection. So it's a flying 5/4 for 5, which isn't too bad by itself, but whenever you cast an instant sorcery, you get to put a 1/1 human wizard creature token onto the battlefield. Then if you control 3 or more wizards, which it shouldn't be too difficult, you get to flip him over to a flying 6/5, where wizards you control get +2/+1 and have flying, which is just really nice. And then whenever you cast an instant sorcery, you get to keep getting more and more and more. So nice little anthem effect on top as well. So I really am enjoying the Spells Matter archetype with that. And the last of all, we've got Arcane Savant, which is just really, really fun card to have. So it's a 3/3 for 5. So before you shuffle your deck at the start of the game, you get to reveal it and then exile an instant sorcery you didn't put in your deck. When he enters the battlefield, you then get to play the card that you exiled for free, and that could be absolutely anything. It could be a board wipe, it could be a buff spell, it could be absolutely anything, and I really do like that about this card. So moving on to the 6+ drops, I've completed the Titan cycle within my cube. So we've got Frost Titan here, a 6/6/6, which is really nice. Whenever it becomes a target of a spell or ability, it gets countered unless a controller pays 2, which is really useful, nice bit of protection on him. Plus, whenever he enters the battlefield or attacks, you get to tap target permanent, which is again really, really useful, and it doesn't untap on their untap step, so it can be really, really useful there. Torrential Gearhulk is just a really, really all-round solid card. It's been doing great work in Standard as well. So it's a flash 5/6 for 6, which is really nice. Enters the battlefield, you get to cast a target instant card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. So this could be flashed in at a point in time to give you a nice body plus a counter spell for something your opponent's trying to do, or absolutely any other instant card as well. So, card draw, something along those lines. It's just a fantastic card. Next up, we've got Aetherling, and I really do like this card because it's quite versatile in what it can do. So for 6, it's a 4/5. You get to exile it and return it back, which is quite nice, so blinking it. You get to pay 1 blue and make it unblockable, which is really nice, and then you can pay the extra mana to really, really just push it over the edge to deal some significant damage or become a really huge blocker, so again, always useful. And the last up, we've got Inkwell Leviathan, and this is just really nice as a reanimation style target or a tinker target or something along those lines. 7/11 for 9 as Trample, Island Walk and Shroud. I mean, this is just going to finish something game off really quickly. So moving on to the instants, and I've made quite a little bit of a difference within blue for sure, just making sure that there was more spells to creature ratio, because I didn't quite have that set up that well previously when I first had my first iteration of my cube, so I've made sure I've done a lot better with that. So first up, we've got Thought Scour. So target player puts top 2 cards into a graveyard, so that could be quite useful for yourself. You could mill yourself to try and get some reanimation targets, for example, but into your graveyard straight away. Again, quite useful, and drawing a card on top. Old style artwork here for Force Spike, again just really a useful counter spell. And next we've got Brainstorm, again drawing 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order so it can sort out some turns for you. A Tutor card, again I'm very happy to have opened this. Search your library for an instant sorcery, reveal that card and then put it on top, which is always going to be useful if you're going to need a counter spell or something end up soon. Censor is one of the new cards from Amonkhet. I have been quite impressed with this, just because, yeah, it's a little bit more expensive version of Force Spike, which we've already got, but you've got the cycling on top, so you can pay 1 to draw a card as well. It can be quite useful in certain circumstances, depending on which way you want to go, but having a counter spell is always useful. Next, we've got Anticipate again. This hasn't changed, it's just a nice draw spell there. Remand is going to be a nice counter spell. You put it into the owner's hand instead and draw a card on top. We've got a foil Stymied Hopes here. Again, I'm trying my best to show the foiling. Just about see it. Counter target spell unless it pays 1, plus you get a scry on top, so again be quite useful. Negate, so just another counter spell going on there. Impulse, look in the top 4 cards of your library, put 1 into your hand, rest in the bottom, so again that'd be quite useful. You can sort out your your plays and get rid of some dead cards. Into the Royal, always useful to have. You can bounce something back, and if you kick it, you get to draw a card on top. Quite useful. Cyclonic Rift here, which is something I'm very, very happy again to get from Modern Masters 2017. It's a general theme of going on. Really, really increase the power level of my cube. Return target non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand, or you can overload it to get everything back, which is always good. Just, good old counter spell. Days is just nice. You get to return an island instead of paying its cost, and then, just counter spell there. Memory Lapse, so counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, put on top of its owner's library instead of the graveyard. Again, it'd be quite useful because you're going to know what the opponent's next play is going to be. Thirst for Knowledge is always useful, especially for a Reanimator, which I've got trying to achieve. I've got a couple of cards I need to pick up in Entombed and Reanimate. For sure, and there's a couple of other reanimation targets as well I'd like to pick up, like Iona and a few others. So, but it's always useful drawing 3 cards, discarding 2, unless you get discard an artifact, but, it's going to fill your graveyard up quite nicely. Disallows a card from Aether Revolt I was very, very impressed with. It's always useful to have. It might be slightly more expensive, but it's going to get rid of activative abilities for Emrakul and other stuff like that. Counter and target spells as well. It's just a very useful, versatile card there. Next, we've got Forbidden Alchemy. Again, that's in foil. We're trying our best to show it. Useful card there, 3 costs. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. 1 into your hand, rest into your graveyard. Again, always going to be useful to fill your graveyard up. Sonic Blast is, I just love the old artwork on this, it just looks really cool. That guy's definitely got a headache. So for 2 in a blue, deals 4 damage to target creature or player, and it does 2 damage to you. You're not going to expect that from blue, so it's always useful to have there. Fact or Fiction, useful, very useful card there. So 3 in a blue, reveal the top 5 of your library, your opponent puts them into 2 separate piles, and then you get to put 1 into your hand, 1 into your graveyard. So this could really work out well into your favour. Another card we've got from Amonkhet, again it is foil. It's quite difficult to see with the sleeves we've got going on here. I do need to replace these. Hoping to have a full set of Eclipse sleeves for sure at some point soon for the whole cube, which will be quite fun, and definitely be double sleeving. So before anybody says anything, yes, I do need to double sleeve this cube. I just like the versatility of this card. So 3 in a white, but target spell or non-land permanent on top of its owner's library, second from the top. And then you've got the Aftermath. I don't like the look of the cards myself, but the way they look, but they are going to be quite useful. And then for memory, each player shuffles his or her graveyard into her library and then draws 7 cards. So that's really, really nice effect to have in blue there. Next up, we've got Summary Dismissal. So exile all other spells and counter all abilities. So that's, again, quite useful to have later in the game. Gifts Ungiven, this is another card that would be quite useful, especially if you're trying to get reanimation targets or things like that into your graveyard and spells into your hand. So search your library for up to 4 cards with different names, what's obviously going to be the case in the cube. Target opponent chooses 2 of those cards, put the chosen cards into your graveyard and then the rest into your hand. So again, could be quite useful, especially if you could say, for example, you can pick up 3 targets and or 2 targets and 2 reanimation spells or things like that. You may be able to get away with, filling your hand and graveyard up quite well. Dismiss, again, we've got ourselves a counter spell with a drawing a card on top. Fairly expensive, but hey ho. Jace's Ingenuity, so for 3 and 2 blue, drawing 3 cards, always useful. Another one of the card draw spells I'm glad to have got hold of is Dig Through Time. You're never going to pay 8 for this. You can exile cards from your graveyard to pay 1 of its cost and put the top 7. Look at the top 7 cards, put 2 of them into your hand. Rest at the bottom of your library in any order. You can get this really cheap later on in the game as well, which is always nice. Condescend, so X cost counter spell unless they pay X, and then you get to scry 2 on top, so it can always be quite useful. And then Pull From Tomorrow is another card from Amonkhet that I've been very impressed with. So you get to just draw X cards and discard a card depending on how much money you spend. So again, quite a useful card to have. So moving on to the sorceries, start up with a card that I'm happy got banned because their price got plummeted really nicely. There's a Gitaxian Probe there. To be honest, I'm not going to be complaining about paying a life for that, but paying 1 blue to look at target player's hand and draw a card, always useful. I'm very glad to have picked that up. Slip Through Space, again, this hasn't changed, so making 1 creature unblockable and drawing a card for 1, always useful. Serum Visions, drawing a card, scry 2, sort your next turns out. Great. Press for Answers, again, hasn't really changed, so tap target creature, it doesn't untap, and then you get to investigate on top. I'm very, very glad that one of the members of the Kitchen Table MTG forums sent this up my way. I'm very, very glad for that. Tinker is a card that I've been after, and I really do love the older artwork on that as well. It looks really, really cool. But no, Tinker's a really nice card to have, especially it just means that you're going to be able to get yourself a big creature like the Inkwell Leviathan, for example, or, the Battle Ball, Sundering Titan, anything along those lines. Sacrifice an artifact, search your library for 1 and put it into play. I mean, that's just fantastic. Divination, drawing 2 cards for 3. Show and Tell's another card that I'm very happy to have in my cube. So for 3 cost, each player can put an artifact, creature, enchantment or land from his or her hand into the battlefield. Again, always can be useful. Hopefully your opponent doesn't have as big a threat as you may have, but this is always going to be good to get some massive great creature into play. Compulsive Research, again, can be very useful here. So drawing 3 cards, discard 2 cards unless discard a land. It means you can fill your graveyard up again as well if needed. Deep Analysis is now foil. I can't really tell. But I'm happy to have got that into foil. Target player draws 2 cards for 4, but the flashback cost of 2 and paying 3 life can always be useful, and I'm happy to pay that. Devastation Tide, again, that hasn't changed. Return all non-land permanents to their own hands, or you can get the miracle cost for it as well. Boral's Expertise, again, I've been very impressed with the expertise cards.
Return up to 3 target artifacts or creatures to their opponent's hands, which is good. And you can cast a card with converted mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost on top. So, you know, you can get some really nice plays going on here. Yes, the floor of these expertise cards is really low, but I haven't actually, you know, played the card without getting any much of an upside. But the ceiling of it can be absolutely incredible. And there has been some really fun plays with it. So, really happy to have those in there. They're not going away anytime soon. Pour over the pages, draw 3 cards, untap 2 lands and discard a card. So again, that can be quite useful there. So you're only really paying 3 for that. Upheaval, again, I like having a bit of board wipe. So return all permanents to their own hands. Again, quite useful. Rise from the Tides is a finisher for the Spells Matter archetype. So for 5 and a blue, you get to put a 2/2 zombie creature token onto the battlefield tapped for each instant sorcery in your graveyard. I mean, this could potentially be absolutely massive number of zombies, so great fun there. Temporal Mastery, again, another card from Modern Masters 2017. 7 cost, you can take an extra turn after this one and exile it, or the miracle cost there of 1 and a blue. Again, it's always useful to have an extra turn. And then Treasure Cruise, again, similar to Dig Through Time, you're never going to pay 8 for this. The Delve means you can exile cards, reduce it, and then draw in 3 cards as well. So again, useful to have. So moving on to the blue enchantments, and I have reduced the number of these quite considerably and put more emphasis on instants and sorceries. So first up we've got Narcolepsy. Again, at the beginning of each upkeep, the entitled creature is untapped, you get to tap it, so you know, gets rid of a creature that way. Imprisoned in the Moon, I really do love this card. So you can enchant creature, land or planeswalker, and you get to turn them into, you know, a land. I have no issues in turning in a planeswalker that's just about to ultimate into a land. That's just great fun. Control magic, again, just really, really useful. Always like being able to take over someone else's creature. Biden of Thassa, so this is really nice to have. 4 cost, this is a foil as well. Again, we're going to struggle to show that off. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage, you can draw a card, and then you can pay 1 and a blue. Creatures your opponents control attack this turn as able as well, so it means that anything that they're trying to keep back means that they have to swing in, which would be quite cool. Again, another old style card here in opposition. Really do like this. So you get to tap and untap creature control and tap down their stuff, which is just great fun. Really, really good fun. And then the last one we've got here is Metallurgic Summonings. Again, it's just the same as been here before. It's just another card to have in that Spells Matter archetype to really ramp up with. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, create an XX colors construct artifact creature token where X is that converted mana cost. Then you can pay 3 and a blue to exile it, return all instant sorcery cards from your graveyard to your hand, and then you can only activate this if you control 6 or more artifacts. I mean, that's just fantastic. Really do like this card as your potential finisher for that archetype. It's just been really good.
So there we have all the cards they have in the colour blue, and like I said earlier in the video, there's been so many changes to my cube overall, and it's all for the better. I would just like to thank all of you for putting suggestions in the comment section below of my previous videos. I'm still pretty embarrassed about the cards in the cube I had back at that time, but that's not the point. What the point is now is that my cube is so much better, and to be honest, with the help of everybody here, everybody's cubes could become so much better, and this is how it ends up working. You can make a first initial cube and then you just work at it over time, getting new singles and stuff like that. So it's really been a very exciting project for me, and I can't wait to see what your suggestions are this time and for the rest of the colours in the set as well. So I mean, I'm really enjoying how the cube's playing, and that is completely down to you guys helping me, so thank you all so much. Again, in the next videos across the 2-week period, there is going to be each of the colours being broken down the same as this one for the entirety of the cube, and I can promise you I won't leave it 300 odd changes for my next cube update video. They will become a lot more regular, definitely when each of the new sets come out, and if I have a month where I end up buying a load of singles as well to make changes to what you have suggested to me in the comment section. Again, if you have any suggestions to what I have already, again, please put them in the comment section below. I had some really great discussion yesterday about the white section, so it'd be lovely to have the same for the blue section and all the other colours that I've got coming. So again, thank you all so much for helping me grow this cube, and like I said earlier in the video, links in the description below will be for the entirety of them, plus there'll be a playlist as well in case you've missed any. So thank you again so much.
I would just like to take this moment to thank my Patreons of the channel. I can't thank you enough for the help and support that you're giving me. If you'd like to do the same, head over to patreon.com/lifebegins@20, and there'll be a link in the description below for that as well, where there are plenty of rewards to choose from. With your support, we can really push to make this channel even better. Be sure to check out our sponsor, 5colorcombo.com, for a great range of Magic the Gathering accessories with stunning artwork, plus a great app to draft and create decks on the fly. Use the referral code LifeBegins20 for 5% off. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for new videos every Tuesday and Friday. With your support, we can really help this channel to grow. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.